I guess what Ted sees as a shift in tone, I see as something more sinister, approaching a media cartel. I think we're beyond conventional notions of bias. I mean, we're all used to charges of bias. I make them, people to my left make them, people to my right make them. It's sort of a staple of journalism criticism. But this isn't a question of just that the Times has sort of left reporters and other places have left-wing reporters or pro-amnesty reporters or pro-immigration reform reporters, and maybe people on the right would have people on the other side. People on the right don't have people on the other side. We have a monopolistic lock of pro-amnesty sentiment on the media. I mean, the New York Times, for all its flaws, is more open than Fox News. There isn't a single anchor on Fox News who isn't for amnesty. Rupert Murdoch's for amnesty. Shep Smith is for amnesty. Hannity's now for amnesty. O'Reilly's now for amnesty. It's unanimous. So all the networks are for amnesty. All the right, yeah. All the Republican presidential candidates, John Chait in New York Times and New York Magazine, pointed out that there's sort of a cartel, a pro amnesty cartel of Republican candidates. Basically, all the Republican candidates you could think of who were mentioned are for comprehensive immigration reform. The only possible exception would be Ted Cruz, and he's still on the fence as far as running for president. The think tanks, there's tremendous pressure from donors on right-wing think tanks to be pro-amnesty. I know that from talking to people who run think tanks. There's this huge sort of juggernaut that doesn't necessarily reflect popular sentiment. It reflects money. In addition to popular sentiment, and with the LA Times, there's an extra element, and with other papers, it's a business decision. They want to appeal to Latino readers. They're terrified that they will lose Latino readers. They're terrified that what happened to the Washington Post, where, if you remember, there was a boycott by the black community for a while of the Post magazine. The magazine was dumped on the Post doorstep week after week. They're terrified of offending this segment of customers they have, and that inhibits their coverage. I don't quite know what to call it. The epistemic closure is the fancy word that National Review used. It's not quite that. It's more like a quasi-monopoly of opinion. We have this other phenomenon I call pundit rot, which is you take otherwise sensible columnists like Charles Krauthammer and Michael Barone, who normally make sort of cogent arguments, whether you agree with them or not. Suddenly they sort of lost their senses, and they will adopt any argument in order to reach a pro-amnesty conclusion. This was most obvious in a Krauthammer column that proposed actually a very sensible solution to the immigration problem, which is hold off on legalization until the enforcement's in place, then legalize, and then halfway through the column he says, well, that'll never fly. The Democrats will never agree with it. Well, when does Charles Krauthammer ever say, well, I'm abandoning this idea because the Democrats won't agree with it, okay? And then he endorsed the Rubio bill, which, if you read Mark's piece in the National Review, you'll learn is a fraud. The same with Michael Barone, who's always been a little squishy on immigration, but he wrote a piece saying he doesn't think there's going to be another wave of illegal immigration from Mexico like the last one. He may be right. He knows more about demographics than I do, but he never addresses the argument of why not wait and see if that happens, and why not, and are you ever going to get the border enforcement he wants or the enforcement he wants if you legalize first, as Rubio does. So these are arguments that they normally wouldn't make. It's sort of like there's an urge to get to yes on amnesty, to get right with somebody, and I don't know who they're getting right with, but it reminds me of it's almost like a sex drive. You'll say anything to the girl just to get a yes, you know? What the hell? The other there's also a slight conspiratorial aspect to this, which is more than bias. It's almost as if there was a meeting where people in this pro-amnesty juggernaut sort of decide what they're going to do. And maybe, Grover has that meeting. He thinks he's having that meeting. I don't think that's the meeting where this is decided. I'm not sure there is a meeting. But all of a sudden you see 20 articles attacking Ted Cruz. Why all of a sudden has the press decided to attack Ted Cruz? Well, he's an interesting person, but he's also the only conceivable Republican presidential candidate, a credible Republican presidential candidate who might do to amnesty what Ronald Reagan did to the last big Washington consensus, which is the guaranteed income. The guaranteed income was very similar to the current pro-amnesty consensus, and the people of both left and right, Richard Nixon as well as Democrat Jordan McGovern, were for a guaranteed income. It was the bipartisan Washington consensus. It just happened to be like amnesty, a terrible idea. And there was one politician, this crazy guy out in California, Ronald Reagan, who spoke up against it and said it was not a dole, it was a mega dole. And it turned out he won the day. It didn't get through Congress. If you cast your eyes about looking for the potential Reagan in this current debate, your eyes light on Ted Cruz. And sure enough, he's the person who's under attack. Is that because, a memo went out from Cecilia Munoz saying that we all have to attack Ted Cruz? I doubt it, but there are meetings all around town where that sort of strategy is hashed out. And the final thing I want to echo, Mr. Bartlett, where are the Democrats in this? This is a policy which benefits the rich. It hurts working Americans. You would think normally that at least one or two Democrats would speak up on behalf of the people whose wages are going to be decreased. But that doesn't happen either.